The James Show Podcast.
And the rumor mill came to a roar yesterday, and we actually had to break in last night to WBAP regular programming for special programming. And you know it was special because it was hosted by me, so that helps a lot. But there seems to be a compromise, and not a whole lot has been accomplished, just words. And, you know, they're putting pen to paper right now. The cloture vote that happened last night doesn't mean anything's passed yet. It just means debate ends. We still have to have the Senate vote and pass on all three bills. And then after that happens, Mike Johnson said he's going to call the House back into session. He'll give them 36 hours. What's going on? Why not call them back now if this is a done deal? So there's still some weirdness going on. Let me run it all by you, and then you can tell me what you think here. So in the shutdown deal, this was Mike Johnson earlier today saying, well, we've reached a deal.
Now finally appear ready to do what Republicans and President Trump and millions of hardworking American people have been asking them to do for weeks. But as we said from the beginning, the people's government cannot be held hostage to further anyone's political agenda. That was never right. And shutting down the government never produces anything. It never has, if you study history. And so here we are.
All right. So, yeah, here we are. We all agree. Shutdown's not good. Let's come up with the deal. Let's get together. Let's make this happen. Now, here's where the timetable starts to get long. Because when you see the headlines from last night, in fact, when I was goofing around on social media last night, they were acting like, well, shutdown's over. Well, no, the shutdown's not over. We have a verbal agreement on the deal. We have the cloture vote passed. We still have to have the Senate pass all three bills. And then this is where Mike Johnson said 36 hours. He's going to call the House to session 36 hours after the Senate version passes.
At the very moment that they do that final vote, I will call all House members to return to Washington as quickly as possible. We'll give a 36-hour formal and official notice so that we can vote as soon as possible to pass the amended CR bill and get it to the president's desk. As you all know, and he said as recently as last night, I was with him, and he told the press, he said, we want to get the government open. He's very anxious to get the government reopened and to end the Schumer shutdown. We all are.
So this is kind of being slow rolled. Mike Johnson, you should have called him and given him 36 hours last night, because everyone's making it sound like a done deal. Do you have the votes? Well, you just had the votes in cloture, so now all you got to do is have 51 votes or 50 and one abstention to get anything passed. So there's nothing stopping you now. What's the holdup? So they're actually don't seem to be in very much of a hurry here. Now, the most important soundbite I'm going to play for you today comes from a week ago. Ted Cruz was on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo. Ted Cruz also made this a similar prediction with Larry Kudlow from Fox Business, saying this shutdown's about to end because this is all about the election. And you'll know it's all about the election because there's not going to be any big compromises made. The Democrats are going to cave on everything just so they can end this. And what this kind of proves is this theory that Ted Cruz threw out last weekend is bearing out to be true. His prediction timetable is bearing out to be correct, and the terms of the deal are turning out to be correct.
Will the government open this upcoming week? This is getting seriously impacting the U.S. economy. What's your take?
I think it's likely to open Wednesday or Thursday of this week. The Democrats will wait until after Election Day because they think a shutdown is good for energizing the crazies in their party. But I think it'll be either late this week or early next week.
Are you going to have to give on the Obamacare subsidies?
No, the Democrats will collapse entirely.
Okay.
All right. Round of applause. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? And this is one of the great litmus tests that I wish more people would do. This is what Rush Limbaugh taught you, the drive-by media. They're just going to run out, they're going to say a whole bunch of things, and you never circle back and revisit it. And he did. So I just circled back and revisited that. I didn't do a drive-by media of that. He made a prediction, and we held him to account. Turns out he was right. One of the most optimistic parts of the weekend where I knew the government shutdown was going to happen pretty soon is because MSNBC said the opposite. This is Ryan Nobles, a guest on MSNBC on their Meet the Press Roundtable, saying, oh, no, you can expect this shutdown to continue and last past Thanksgiving.
Do you think they're going to get a deal?
No.
I didn't see that much optimism.
And it's not just what they told you, it's also what I'm hearing from people that I talked to about this issue. They seem pretty entrenched in their original positions. And if you actually go back to the things they were saying prior to the shutdown beginning and comparing them to what they're saying now, they really haven't moved all that much. You know, Senator Schumer this week presenting this proposal about a one-year extension, that really fell with a lead balloon in the White House. Democrats feel emboldened. Their base is telling them to continue to fight. Republicans feel no incentive to give on this at all. That's the recipe for this continuing on. And Kristen, I don't want to say this, but I really believe this could extend all the way to Thanksgiving, if not beyond, because there just seems to be no break in this fever.
So there it is. One side tells you that the shutdown is going to be done by the end of the week, maybe beginning of next week, and comes out just right on time. Next guy, the other side of the aisle, looking at the exact same information. Actually, this was made more recently. So he should be a little more accurate in his prediction because he has a whole new week of information. And this was while the rumor mill was churning. He said, nah, expect this to go past Thanksgiving. But do y'all have to be wrong about everything? Do you have to be that wrong about everything? The other thing that the prediction here that we need to circle back for, drive-by media, the Rush Limbaugh trick, is we're doing this all without ending the filibuster. I think that's super important. I'm glad we didn't have to end the filibuster. I didn't like the idea of ending the filibuster. And Ted Cruz didn't like it either, senator from Texas. This was on the 7th. So what is that? Friday? Yeah, he was saying that we're not going to end the filibuster. This was the Kudlow clip because we don't have the votes in the filibuster. And he turned out to be correct on that. Here we have the budget compromise. It's already past cloture, and they didn't have to use the nuclear option.
I'm sure you were at the Republican breakfast with President Trump. All right, he wants to end the filibuster. Okay, and he's, campaigning on it, talking about it, tweeting on it. He talked to you all at the breakfast meeting. What does Senator Ted Cruz think about this?
Look, the votes are not there to end the filibuster. It is not. Every president of our lifetime has wanted to end the filibuster because if you want to move legislation through, the filibuster necessarily slows things down. I can tell you that when Joe Biden was in the White House and Democrats had the House and Senate, it is only the filibuster that stopped us from absolute devastation.
There you go. So there is revisiting the two most important points of what the shutdown compromise could look like. It's done without the filibuster, and it's done without any big changes to what the Republicans were pushing in the beginning. Now, a lot of Republicans are running out saying, well, this is a clear victory for us. A lot of Democrats are saying, well, this is a clear loss for us. Is it? Continuing the previous Democrat spending bill is a big loss for Democrats and a big gain for Republicans? Donald Kimball is my next guest. He's with the Young Voices. Welcome back, Donald Kimball. And in this shutdown compromise, hey, thank you, everybody. In this shutdown compromise that we hear, it seems that the Republicans got what they were asking for and the Democrats just capitulated. And that almost makes me suspicious, Donald.
Thanks for having me back. I wouldn't say you're wrong to be suspicious, right? I think the biggest problem with these big shutdown fights is that it feels like there are government created problems, and then these shutdown fights often happen when particularly people on the left side of the spectrum want to apply a Band-Aid or keep a Band-Aid that was supposed to be only temporary, and then Republicans say, no, we can't spend that much money or we can't put that much policy in effect. The shutdown happens, the fight occurs, and then concessions are made, but we always inch towards more and more spending. And so even in this where, the Democrats ostensibly, quote unquote, lost, we're still seeing things like a bunch of rehiring and preventing of OMB reduction cuts in terms of personnel. So, the move here is not less spending. It's more spending, but less spending than Democrats wanted. So there's going to be a separate vote on the ACA extensions, which is kind of that Band-Aid thing I alluded to. But even still, we're at a point where some of the cuts in personnel and other spending that Republicans and Trump wanted are now sort of the compromise as well. We won't go that far. Then we'll get the government back open. And so with every shutdown fight, I tend to think more and more that it always inevitably leads to bigger and bigger government, which is not great for someone who wasn't that impacted by the the shutdown, other than things like airports, where maybe we should have those a little more privatized. Who knows?
Hey, I think that's one of the great lessons here. When you have the people who are concerned about, well, if we don't have the government running, it's going to cut off food aid to poor people, or it's going to cut off air traffic control to airports, or it's going to cut off name the XYZ program. And I thought that was a great case for privatization, not reopening the government.
Well, you're absolutely right. You think about how much people mistrust and dislike politicians. They dislike this political fighting, and then realize that these are the people, when they have their petty fights, that use important things as leverage, right? The reason why I don't want the government involved in something like air traffic control, I mean, maybe there's some role there, but at least to the point where we should have our airports operating without the government, having its direct hand in, or things like charitable causes and like people in need. The reason why these things shouldn't have government involvement is exactly because they're so important. And they often get used as sort of the bartering chip for priorities that are not nearly as important. If those were not things in government's control, then the shutdown literally would not have impacted most people's lives. But because they have this sort of bartering chip, they can use this to say, hey, isn't this shutdown the worst thing in the world? When in reality, the only thing that's bad about it is that the government controlled those important things.
So who do you think really won in this? I thought the compromise was so bad. I thought it was so pro-Democrat that Democrats were crazy to fight it to begin with. But, they wanted government to be even bigger. And so now that the election is passed, they're like, nah, this will work. We're not going to fight you anymore. And that kind of betrays how bad the deal was, in my point of view.
Yeah, I think from a political sort of an analyst position of how are people perceiving this, partisans are going to think their side won, because that's typically how it just occurs. But I think the moderate and independent people especially those who don't pay a ton of close attention, tend to only think about who is the president right now, and then maybe who controls the Senate and the House. And so I tend to think that this is probably overall worse optics for Republicans, only because it's a long shutdown. And again, the person not really paying that much attention thinks, oh, the government shut down. Oh, food benefits went by the wayside. Well, gosh, why is Trump doing this? And I think when you look at local election results, even moderate Republicans in places like Washington State, for instance, where we had a bunch of local elections in this past thing, who did all their best to separate themselves from Donald Trump. We've had incredible tax and spending increases here from Democrat control, but it doesn't matter. The sort of the federal perception was tied down with these local elections. And so people vote based on what they hear in sort of the national news. And so based on that, my guess is that Republicans probably took a harder hit, although this particular deal is probably one of the better ways it could have ended for Republicans.
You mean a harder hit in the court of public opinion?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So the other thing I like, and we're talking with Donald Kimball from Young Voices, if you're just joining us, we managed to get through this without getting rid of the filibuster. And I'm not sure if people understand how important of a dodge that is.
Oh, you're 100% right. And I think that this is easily one of the things where people say, well, if we don't do it, they will. But the problem is that's race to the bottom politics. And at that point, you're kind of trying to burn the turf so that your enemy can't. But I think that that's the lesson that the left needed to learn and won't learn about, in general, executive authority. So you look at the massive executive overreach that Barack Obama did when he was president, and they thought, we're sort of set for life. We're going to enshrine all these powers. And then Donald Trump comes into office, and they're like, oh, crap. Now, of course, they don't learn their lesson. But I think that the conservatives need to learn that lesson. And so in the similar way, if you abolish that filibuster, like, you might get the short-term gain, but the long-term consequences are going to be so detrimental. It's kind of like court packing or anything else, where once you start breaking some of these safeguards that are built into the American constitutional system, our republic, it really becomes a race to the bottom very, very quickly.
Is there any chance this doesn't pass? We had the big procedural vote happen yesterday, but they seem to be slow rolling the actual bills themselves today. The House of Representatives doesn't seem to be too enthusiastic about getting into town. Is there any chance this falls apart?
I don't think so at this point. It seems like the damage is probably done. I think the holdouts on the Democrat side don't really have an incentive to make this last longer based on the fact that they gave up their biggest leverage with the Affordable Care Act subsidies, right? You've already alienated your hard left wing, your Bernie Sanders and such. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them. And as far as the Republicans go, the only thing that I could possibly see wanting to slow this down would be from the House, which is the fear of Thomas Massey bringing up the Epstein files vote, because the 40-day shutdown occurred right when he had the last vote needed to release those files that they did not want released. So if there's any delay on the House side, that could be it, but that's speculation. I'm not saying that for sure one way or the other.
I'm glad you brought that up. I've forgotten all about that. Donald Kimball from Young Voices. Find him online. Donald Kimball, I appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
And a lot of people are wondering, so what's the timetable here? When are the airlines going to be back to normal? When is my food stamp card going to be refilled? When is my federal government paycheck going to be restored? And if you're wondering about the details on that, my sad answer is I don't know. I don't know when they're going to get all this done. It sounded like they were going to get it all done within a matter of like 24 to 48 hours last night. Hey, we've got the votes. Let's get together. We got the Senate together. It's on a Sunday night. We can work anytime we want. Meanwhile, the House is all spread all over the country and like, well, maybe in 3 days after y'all actually pass everything and the votes have already gone through, we can talk about doing a vote here. So on one hand, the Senate seems to be in a big hurry. House does not seem to be in a big hurry. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned here, and I hope they don't escape the public consciousness. For someone who listens to WBAP, I'm sure you get all these lessons here. In fact, you probably didn't need these lessons. But for a lot of people, the worries about SNAP, the worries about food stamps, we were being told that there's no way we could feed all the hungry people out there, all the needy people, without a federal government program, which is just silliness. Seeing as how we never had a federal government program like food stamps until what, LBJ? But yeah, here we are. What is this? 2 weeks into the food stamp cutoff almost, and it looks like private sectors did step up. It looks like churches and food banks did cover the need. But this is what you were told 2 days before the food stamps were cut off.
I am 34 years old, and I am the mother of two boys, 8 and 3.
For Simone Wilkes, the shutdown isn't about politics. It's about survival.
My stomach dropped because I'm already struggling. I'm already stretching food.
She's one of 42 million Americans who rely on SNAP, the federal program that helps families afford groceries. But with the government shutdown dragging into a fourth week, those benefits could be cut off as early as November 1st. Food banks across the country are already seeing longer lines and shorter supplies.
SNAP is a frontline program that really just cannot be replaced by charitable food assistance.
Disagree. We just saw you be wrong. This was from ABC News on October 30th. This was 2 days before the food stamp cutoff actually happened. And they were already chumming the water. There's no way we can survive without big government. They said, and I'm not being hyperbolic, they said at the very beginning, this is about survival. Oh, this is about survival, really?
I am 34 years old, and I am the mother of two boys, 8 and 3.
For Simone Wilkes, the shutdown isn't about politics. It's about survival.
You know what? How many people died? How many people died of starvation? 0? So no, this wasn't about survival. This was about hyperbolic, terrible journalism, all for a political cause, and I'm tired of seeing it. You guys are wrong about everything. Aren't you ever embarrassed about how wrong you are about all your predictions and your economic schools of thought? 800-288-9227. This is Bill and Garland. You're on WBAP.
Yeah, well, we've been put through hell for 40 days, and the Democrats have finally decided they're going to give up, and nothing is any different. These people are so pathetic. You know, we haven't had a budget in 30 years. They can't manage to pass 12 amendments to fund the government. This is a joke. These people are a joke.
So was there sarcasm at the very beginning there when you said we've been put through hell for the last 40 days? Or are you someone who actually was directly affected by the shutdown? Because most of us didn't.
I wasn't. I was, okay. No, I was but they put through a lot of poor people through this, and it's just ridiculous. These guys are a bunch of grifters, damn near every one of them, and I'm just sick of this just continuous volatility in the government. Let's just settle down and pass the damn bills.
Well, I don't want to just pass the damn bills if they continue the $1.8 trillion deficits. I don't want to just continue to pass the bills if it's not going to balance the budget or if it's going to continue driving the car toward this fiscal cliff that we're about to run off to. Yeah, I am more than willing to accept whatever chaos comes from us just slamming the brakes, being fiscally responsible, making the cuts, and then making the adjustments afterwards. And your original sentiment is so true. We've only passed 4 budgets on time in the last 40 years. 4, Bill. So you're absolutely right. Thank you very much for calling in, sir. He made it official yesterday. This is the report from WFAA.
Governor Greg Abbott officially announces he is running for re-election for a 4th term.
We will protect what we built. We will finish what we started. We will lead Texas into its glorious future. And that's why tonight
Abbott has served as governor since 2015. If he is reelected and serves the full term, he would become the longest serving governor in Texas history. Currently, his predecessor, Rick Perry, holds that title.
All right. Enough of that. My next guest is going to have some strong opinions about this. The great state rep, Brian Harrison, out of the Midlothian area. Welcome back, Brian Harrison.
James Parker, always great to be with you, my friend.
All right. Generally speaking, I'm just going to assume you're against this. I mean, I am, and you and I are simpatico on a lot of issues here. Do we agree on this one?
I think a lot of people are starting to ask the question, how long is long enough? How long should somebody be able to serve as governor of Texas? Because, the governor made it official. He is asking 30 million Texans to give him his 4th term. It would be unprecedented. He would be the governor of the state of Texas for 16 years, meaning people would be born and getting driver's licenses and driving on our roads all under the same person. And so, there's a lot of angst in the grassroots. I mean, Texas voters, these are the people that elected Donald Trump with a 14-point landslide. They want bold Republican leadership. They deserve bold Republican leadership. And everything in that speech last night, all the stuff he's saying he'll do if he gets 4 more years, I'm sorry, I am left scratching my head a little bit. We could have done all those things in the last 12 years, so that's why, and a lot of them I'm asking him to call us a special session for right now, because it's not like he's a challenger saying, oh, if you elect me, I'll do these things. He's the governor today. Call us back for a special session. Let's cut property taxes right now before the tax bills, are due 2 months from now. Let's solve the big problems confronting our state. So it is frustrating for a lot of folks in the grassroots, and I know a lot of folks are starting to more loudly than they used to talk about the term limits. Possibly for Texas governors.
Well, see, my complaint has nothing to do with term limits. And, while generally speaking, most people think that you can be in office past your point of usefulness. But my big complaint against Greg Abbott isn't his time in office. It's his policies that he's pursued while in office. If he was doing everything the way you and I wanted to do, I'd be cheering for a 4th term. So I don't want people to think that I'm against him having a 4th term because it's a 4th term. I'm against him having a 4th term because we didn't get property taxes. We don't have school choice. He demonstrated he was not committed to liberty during the COVID shutdown. I still don't forgive him for all of that stuff. I have a long memory, Brian Harrison.
That was one of my first real exposures to how corrupt and fake the Republican leadership is in Texas. I was working with President Trump as his chief of staff at HHS in 2020, trying to reopen the economy. I move home, get elected in 21, and I was horrified to learn that the Texas government still had COVID vaccine mandates. The Texas government stayed in a COVID disaster longer than every single other state in the union, except for the People's Republic of Illinois. And then to your point, the reason I think people are talking about term limits isn't maybe so much for their views on term limits themselves, but as you said, because of the policies, because there's a record of 12 years. And what is that record look like? We've got record DEI. I think the Texas government's been the biggest funder of DEI maybe in the whole country. We've got more, we're indoctrinating the entire next generation in transgenderism thanks to Greg Abbott's regents at every one of our public universities. We've got corporate welfare on steroids. I mean, did I miss it? Did Governor Abbott just forget to mention the billions of dollars he's stealing from taxpayers to give to liberal Hollywood, or the money he's bribing California companies to move here, or the fact that property taxes have basically done nothing but skyrocket for the past 12 years? That's the objection. It's the policies.
All right, State Rep Brian Harrison, there's a lot of these projects that sound like they're coming straight out of the Al Gore playbook. And then they get signed on here. Like, it disgusts me that Texas is number one for wind power generation, because that's all subsidized. It's not like we naturally did that, or we're talented, or we found out some new efficiency. No, we've just squandered more tax dollars on wind power than any other state. And the other things, like, what did they do a couple years ago? Like the rural broadband program, where we've got to spend billions of dollars. Yeah, so some guy who lives out in the sticks can get more than 300 megabits per second. I'm like, that's not a priority.
Well, by the way, when we're switching to satellite anyway, I mean, this is the broadband, the way we're doing this is going to be antiquated in just a few years. But yeah, I mean, look at this. I mean, the DMV, I mean, we're not even doing the basics, right? President Trump's waging a war on illegal immigration. Well, the Texas government, instead of locking arms with the president to secure the borders and fight illegal immigration, the Texas government, under Greg Abbott's appointees at the Department of Motor Vehicle, I broke this scandal last week, we're facilitating illegal immigration and by allowing illegal aliens to register vehicles here in the state of Texas. And so it's just absolutely an outrage what Texans, they're being taxed out of their homes, right? Highest effective property tax rate by one study in the whole country. Texans are being taxed out of their homes to, you're right, fund the leftist progressive AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Joe Biden agenda, the Green New Deal scam. We are absolutely spending tax dollars, and have been for decades, on these renewables to prop them up when they can't compete, or to bribe liberal woke companies to move here from California, and then we don't make them pay the property taxes that we make the hardworking ma and pa shop small business owners in the state. So the Texas government, here's the bottom: the Texas government is corrupt. The Texas the government hates the Texas taxpayer, and it's quite frankly, it's just past time that we get elected Republicans down in Austin that put the people first, that prioritize their freedom, their liberty. Texas should be the number one state in America for liberty, but we're not even close.
All right, dad joke warning here. From what Brian was describing, it sounds less like Texas and more like taxes. Am I right, guys? Huh? Am I right?
And maybe it's not a coincidence that it's the same letters.
All right,
same letters.
So if not, do we have time to do this? I only have 1 minute left, and the question is, if not Governor Abbott, who?
Well, that's a tough thing. I mean, look, the governor, for better or for worse, he's sitting on, roughly $100 million, which does get to the question. I mean, will conservatives actually have a choice in this election? The liberal maintenance of the status quo, high taxes, pro-DEI, pro-transgender indoctrination, corporate welfare, money for Hollywood, facilitating illegal immigration, woke indoctrination, or will there be a viable candidate? It's just very hard when every basically special interest liberal group across Texas and the country, by the way, I mean, lots of money from all over the country, has poured in to prop up somebody who, quite frankly, is very good for the rich elitist status quo. And so that's a problem. It's going to be very hard. There may be some candidates here or there. I get asked, and I'm honored to be asked to run very frequently. But here's what I can tell you. All I can tell you for sure is that we've got a course correct in this state, and Texans have been sold out by the corrupt liberal uniparty in Austin, and we need and deserve bold Republican leadership that is not afraid to stand up and fight the liberal progressives that are hell-bent on destroying our state and our country.
I was expecting maybe you would say, well, hell, Parker, I'm running. You want to make an announcement here on the James Show, or
you know what, James? I promise you, if I were to make that announcement, you'd be one of my first phone calls to make, my friend.
Yeah, probably after your friends in Houston. But thank you very much for your time on the James Show.
It's okay.
I know. It's State Rep Brian Harrison out of Midlothian. Give us an assist. What do you think about Governor Abbott running for a fourth term? Would you support that? If not him, who? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'll give you my short list next on The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.